the first of our 10-week series for our professional development on Wampanoag culture, etc. Today, this is Rita Lopez. She's our guest today, but we'll get to that a little bit more in a minute. My name is Natana Greendeer. If you do not know me, I've worked a little bit here and there in the schools in the past, so I do know a lot of you. Also went to Mashpee schools, but not high school. So towards you, I think. Yeah. Okay. So just before we get started, I want to just talk a little bit about what we're going to do here over the next 10 weeks, or well, for our 10 sessions. So each week, I'm kind of just the facilitator. Each week, or just about each week, there will be someone who is more expert than I am in that particular topic. This week we're going to be talking about Wampanoag territory and demographics of the tribe, kind of over the last 60 to 100 years or so.
300.
Yeah. Next week we will be talking about kinship and leadership and sort of the different ways that the tribe is governed. And we will have with us one of our clan mothers, Marlene Lopez, that week. For the third week, we're going to be talking about Mashpee after King Philip's War and some of the history that happened kind of 1800s. I think in general, we tend to hear a lot about King Philip's War or now, but there's so much in between that I think a lot of people don't know. So that's going to be the next step there. In week 4, we will talk about boarding schools and educational trauma from boarding schools and kind of how that continues to play out. I think probably in terms of this group, that'll probably be one of the most relatable weeks, I think. Then we will sort of take a turn towards the more recent history, and we'll start talking about the Mashpee 9 in week 5. I think probably a lot of you are familiar with Mashpee 9. I think maybe there was the film might have been shown here recently. That's the Mashpee 9 are a group of 9 men who had a very large court ordeal in the 70s. So we'll start with that. We'll then focus on the land suit, which is a pretty major turning point, I think, for Mashpee politics between the tribe and the town as well in the 70s. Then we will look at federal recognition and land and trust. Then Indian gaming, but not necessarily specific to the tribe, to Mashpee, but also just kind of general and what gaming, what that means for tribes. And then week 9, we will talk about Aboriginal rights, hunting, fishing, that sort of thing. And then lastly, we will talk about cultural revitalization and self-determination and wrap up that. So, any questions about any of that? What's that? Oh, yeah, so I just wanted to kind of see who's here. So if you would like to, we'll go around and start. Your name, your role in the school or otherwise, and what interests you about this or these topics and why you decided to come. So, sure, go for it.
I'll start. I'm Rita Lopez. I'm the enrollment director for the tribe. I'm native. I have been working at the tribe for 12 years. As enrollment director, I have the role of town clerk. So I keep birth certificates, marriage certificates, I keep track of the deceased, I keep their records as well. In doing that, I keep a lot of data. We use a lot of grants in my job, so what I do is I hand out the data. How many children do we have in Mashpee? Or how many are in the cemetery, in the old Indian Meeting House cemetery, things like that. demographics back through history as well. I continuously, you'd think that we'd have everything, but I continuously load my database with historical information as far as any document that I can get my hands on. A lot of people work in genealogy, send us information as well. And now you guys.
Started?
There's a lot of people here, so.
I'm Susie Moffett. I teach photography at Falmouth Academy. And I'm just interested in learning as much about the culture and the history as possible, so that's why I signed up for this. Glad to be here.
We'll just go around that table whichever way. And go on to the next one.
Julia Thompson, adjustment counselor over at the Casey Coombs School. I signed up for it just because I am new to Mashpee. It's my first year in Mashpee. And I really wanted to learn more about the Wampanoag community just because I haven't had much experience with working with the tribe before. So I just kind of wanted to learn as much as possible.
I'm Beth Siegel. I'm the behaviorist at the Coombs School. And I just wanted to learn more about Wampanoag culture and make sure that I am being as respectful and have all the information that I need in order to really work with the tribal community as best as I can.
I'm Brian Frena. I'm the assistant principal at the Kinsey Coombs School here in Mashpee. I'm interested about this because I work in the district where many students come, and I want to learn as much as possible so I can be as inclusive as possible.
Robin Green, I teach kindergarten at TTIC in Falmouth. Again, we have students in our midst that are Wampanoag, have Wampanoag heritage, and we do a lot together, and I want to make sure that I'm as updated as possible and being respectful as possible.
Thanks. Let's go back to that table over there.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Wilbur. I work at the Coombs School. I've been working there for a long time. And I am, separately I'm interested, I've worked with a lot of students, but I am interested in the genealogy too, because everyone's always asking Mr. Peters, everybody knows the famous Mr. Peters at Coombs School, and kids are always like, oh, it's my cousin. I know I had Deja and a long time ago, and I would just cry seeing her. So I'm always asking Peter, Randy, who is this, and is that, and he's like, oh, that's, Buddy's granddaughter, that, this. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish there was a family tree, because for me, when I was in 7th grade, I lived in Bourne, and we went to Lyle Junior High School, and the kids from Mashpee at that time used to go to Bourne to school. So that, and I know you and some of your family members, so, but still it's hard to put people together. Sometimes I ran into someone 20 years later and I realized I had, their family member a long time ago, so. For me, there's a lot of different things just growing up here, going to school with kids from Mashpee and having that was an interesting experience. I didn't realize how hard it was for them until now, when I talk to them now. For me, I just thought I'm embarrassed to say this, but for a lot of kids from Bourne, it was a novelty. We didn't even know anything about the Native culture until they started coming to our school. So, yeah, it's really good to be here. Thanks.
I'm Carolyn Swift. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Quashnet as well. At Coombs is not Quashnet. But I was going to say, over the years, I've been here 29 years, and we've had little bits and pieces of information and professional development, and I kind of would like to bring it all together, a little more information on many different areas, and just have all the information in one place.
I'm Michelle Richmond. I'm also a kindergarten teacher. All of our kindergarten teachers at Casey Coombs, and just having lots of tribal students want to get, be as knowledgeable as I can.
I'm Nadia Carboni. I'm a first grade teacher at Coombs, first year teacher, and relatively new to the Mashpee area. So I just really want to learn as much as I possibly can so I can be inclusive and make everybody feel safe and welcomed in my classroom.
I'm Mariella Walsh. I'm also an adjustment counselor, also new to the Mashpee area. I
because I've always kind of had an interest in Native American history and culture. I can't really tell you why or how that started. But now that I'm in Mashpee and working in a district where it's so rich with that, I just am really excited to learn more about it for all the reasons that everybody is saying, to be inclusive, to understand, you know, the history and the roots and how that impacts people today.
So I'm Jamie Curley, the Director of Special Education for Mashpee Public Schools. And this series has been offered similarly in years past, of which I was unable to attend. So I've been waiting for this to pop up again so that I could attend, so I'm excited to be here.
This is actually very different than the last one, so.
Better?
Yes. So if, for anyone who, right, exactly, improvement. So if any of you did the one that was like 2 or 3 years ago, this is pretty different than that. Go back there.
My name is Karen Ronaldo, and I'm from Falmouth. My relationship actually with the Wampanoags and Mashpee goes back to 1976 with the bicentennial, and then going forward to the tricentennial in 1986, and various celebrations that Mashpee would have. I always had a hand in some of their activities, and developed a friendship with a lot of the people here, and a sensitivity to everything that was going on that concerned the Wampanoags. So I'm very proud of that. And then going forward again to the present time, 2020, being involved with a commissioning to do a first Thanksgiving 1621 painting, and the relationship that developed further and deeper with many of the members of the tribe. Again, very, very proud of that relationship too. The gentleman to my right here, Kevin Doyle, is a retired teacher and lecturer, historian, combat veteran, and he and I collaborated on a book in 2020 called In the Wake of the Mayflower. And so we continue to be very connected to what you're doing, and thank you for doing this. It's very important. And we would like to continue with learning and retaining all this information and putting it forward in presentations that we make, because I think accuracy is what's so important, and telling truthful stories in history is very important. So we're devoted to that, and that's where our passion lies, and that's why we're here today.
And I'm Kevin Doyle, and Karen just said who we are. I actually live right across the street in Southport, and our mailman over there, just by the way, is Chiefy, who will be over here to talk about the Mashpee 9, and that's a great story. Paul Peters wrote that book. Thank you.
Well, I don't know how you follow that. I'm
Go
Deb
Deb.
Coolard. I am the principal over at Casey Coombs. I've been teaching in Mashpee for about 30 years, and I learn something new every year about what, there's so much I don't know that I'm excited to be here and learn more.
Hi, I'm Chris Jones. I teach 4th grade at Quashnet in Mashpee, and I've always been interested in the Wampanoag culture even before I moved here. So to me, working with Wampanoag students every day, it fills me up. I love it, and I just want to know more. I'm just thirsty to figure out, more about the culture, and I'm excited for all of the topics.
I'm Michelle Rebello. I do special ed at Quashnet 3rd grade. This is my 3rd year in Mashpee, so I feel like I've kind of picked up pieces here and there, a lot of it from the kids, and I think it would just be good to have a more well-rounded picture, and a lot of those topics sound really interesting, and I haven't heard of some of them, so excited to learn.
I'm Erin Dowie, speech pathologist in grades 3 through 12, and I think as both a community member and someone that works in the school, especially in a school like this, students just speak so much about the things that they do, their interest, that just has piqued my interest in just wanting to know more about that and be able to connect with students as well, so that they can share it with other peers and the groups that I run and things like that. But it's both as an employee and a community member, just learning more and being able to understand.
I'm Amanda Jeffries. I teach kindergarten at T-Ticket in Falmouth. I've also taught in Mashpee. I grew up in Mashpee, so my friends are Wampanoag. But like Carolyn said, that I've had little bits and pieces. Thanks, Brody. Good, how are you?
You can call me Brian.
But I've had little bits and pieces, so I'm looking forward to having more of like an in-depth course and really, learning more.
I saw Corey in Starbucks yesterday and I was like,
Hi. Yeah, she's definitely taller than me now.
So I'm Brian Brody, I coached Amanda. Making me feel old all of a sudden. So I'm a history teacher and the department head grades 7 through 12 for history. So over the last few years, I feel like we've tried working a lot closer with members of tribal education, which has been a great experience for our department. And I was in that course the 3-4 year pre-COVID, and I'm looking forward to continuing this.
I'm Kirsten Bull. I'm a history teacher here, and I just want to learn more about the culture and the history.
I'm Laura Engstrom. I'm not in the school system, but I'm a member of a Wampanoag study group. I've lived in Falmouth for 50 years, and like many of you have said, just have bits and pieces, and I want to learn all that I can. I think it's important, the history, the current issues, and so forth.
My name is Marilyn Heyer, and I'm part of a fairly new local group called LINK, Linking Indigenous and Non-Indigenous Knowledge. And a few of us a while back became really conscious of the fact that we live right next door to people in the Wampanoag Nation, and we have no relationship at all. In fact, the relationship that we've had historically and ongoing is, oppressor and oppressed. And so some of us got together and formed this group. So I'm here to educate myself. That's one of the tasks of the group, because I don't think we can do anything unless we decolonize ourselves. So I'm here for that, and with the intention of raising awareness in the community, bringing whatever we learn out to other people who have never had the opportunity to learn truth.
Thanks. My name is Ben Harden at Falmouth High School. I teach the food justice program there. So we teach practical agriculture and social justice to students. We do lots of discussions on land rights and food sovereignty, and so I'm here to listen, here to learn, and here to hopefully make myself a better facilitator for my students to learn about the tribe.
Hi, my name is Molly Kuhn. I also went to Mashpee. Amanda and I graduated the same year. We haven't seen each other in 2 decades. Hi, Mr. Brody. Teaching 4th grade over in Falmouth, and I'm here to learn and to be a better teacher.
I'm Connie Garrity. I'm a 5th grade special education teacher over at Washington School. I'm new to the area, and I want to learn about the culture more, for myself as much as for my students.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm here as a community member. Last year I did an AmeriCorps Year of Service in Falmouth schools, and I worked with a lot of Native students, and I realized that I have a lot to learn, and so I was really excited to join the course and be able to learn more.
I'm Marie McKay, and I almost fell on my chair because I used to babysit Molly when she was a baby. I grew up in Mashpee. I've lived here for almost 50 years. There's so much that many of the topics I know of, but there's always so much more I can learn. So I'm here to fill in any place. And I answered your question.
My name is Phoebe Lambert. I've been at all 3 schools in Mashpee as a school adjustment counselor. I'm currently at Washington School, and I took the course a few years ago with you and really enjoyed it, but I feel like since then so much more is involved, so I wanted to continue learning about that. I really loved the language piece last time. A few of us went back to Coombs and would greet each other in Wampanoag for a couple weeks with just sort of practicing it. So it was fun to at least say that, have a little of that connection with the students too. So I'm just looking forward to learning about it.
Hi, I'm Kathy Pastva, and I'm also here sort of representing the community. I'm part of the nonprofit group called Link, which Marilyn mentioned, and we're a pretty new group, but I think what we're surprised by is what we don't know, even though many of us have lived on the Cape for a long time. So we are here to educate ourselves and to learn as much as we can.
And I'm Rachel Hicks, and I have lived closely with this community for the last 45 years, but I'm part of the Link group also, and I'm just really interested in getting more of the details and being able to better pass on what information I get to people that we service with our nonprofit group, because we'll be doing a lot of educational stuff out in the community too.
She's also my mother.
My cousin-in-law.
Roxanne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Roxanne Mills-Spread. I'm the Education Director for the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe. And so pleased to be able to have Natana and Rita here today, and we look forward to the next 9 weeks. Thank you for all of you for being here. And I do just want to say to some of the Falmouth people, we apologize for the mix-up. I met some of the teachers over there at the Community and Government Building, so we kind of swiftly hauled butt over here, so thank you for being here.
Deja, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi everyone, my name is Deja. I was born and raised in Mashpee. I'm a tribal member. I work for the tribe's public relations team, and I also do a little bit of work for the education department as well. So yeah, I'm going to be here filming just so that we can have record of this. So yeah, it's good to see you all here.
Back to me again. My name is Natana Hicks-Greendeer. I have lived in Mashpee pretty much my whole life. And like I said, I was a student here till 8th grade. I was the last class that would have gone to Falmouth, but I did not go there. And right now, I am working as the head of school for the Weedamoo School, which is the tribal language and culture school that some of you probably are aware of. Those of you from Falmouth might not be as aware of. I also am a newly elected tribal council woman, and I also teach Native Studies at Brown University, sort of part-time, so a little bit about what I do. So the areas of my expertise in here are really kind of more around education. But I'm excited to be here because I think that some of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this session is, like I said, the kind of stuff that really hasn't been talked about, and I think it's the kind of thing that's going to really shed some light on some of the kinds of interactions that you have with your students and some of the things that you see that may not have realized have their roots in cultural, experiences and histories. So before we move on to read it completely, I just want to, I know some of you mentioned that, let me switch to the next one. I know a couple of you mentioned how long you've been around, but I actually sort of had this built into the presentation, so we're going to do it again. Just so I can kind of get a sense of who's new and who's not. So get ready to stand up for one of these somewhere. So if you are unfamiliar with Mashpee, either you're new to the Cape, you live off Cape, or you do not teach here, stand up. Cool. All right, thank you. That's me. Stand up if you have lived in or around Mashpee, or you've taught here for less than 15 years. So these markers will probably become a little bit more relevant later, but these increments were sort of chosen purposefully. So the last 15 years approximately is how long the tribe has had federal recognition. So, stand up if you have lived around here or taught here for less than 30 years. And less than 45 years. How about, and this, if you're not this old, your parents as well, if this applies. But if you or your parents have lived in or around Mashpee for less than 60 years. And then stand up if 3 or more of your generations of your family have lived in or around our town of Mashpee. All right, very good, thank you. So from here, you are up, Rita.
Okay.
Oh, we can get rid of that because I'll come back to this later.
Okay. So you don't have mine?
Well, it's on your flash drive? Nope, okay.
It is on the flash drive, but.
We can just X out of here and then come back to it.
Okay.
Do you want, I can pull this up if you need me to.
It's okay, let's try whatever we can here.
I can get it here, and that way you can use this as your notes and I can swipe for you.
I'll have my notes, that's not it. I just can't get it off this screen.
Oh, let's see.
You try. Wait, I thought I had it. Hang on. We're new to this.
Swipe down from the top right corner, and it should be able to get tabs.
Does it matter how many fingers?
Okay. So let's try home.
Escape on the oh, there we go.
Okay. So I need to look at the file somewhere. Yep. It's looking like a USB.
Can you pull it out?
No, just pull it out.
Oh.
I didn't do it.
See in the upper right corner? See that? See the tab? Yeah. That. Try the right menu.
I'm sorry?
The arrow on your right.
The arrow.
Oh, yeah, see that menu that comes. Oh, that's menus on the left. No.
The arrow?
No. Yeah, the arrow.
Yeah. That didn't help.
You have to cancel it, I think.
Yeah, I think it is cancel on that thing.
Oh. All right, let's try.
I don't know what's in here.
Okay.
X out of it.
There you go. Is that you? There we go.
They look flat, sorry. Let's see.
They're all different. We have clear touch, they have touch view, it's all, literally you just keep touching till you figure out what you want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have the name of the file on there? I'm not seeing it here.
You put in the search bar at the top.
Yeah, if I could remember the name of it.
So as we're waiting, there's an attendance sheet going around for Mashpee. Falmouth has a sheet here. If your name's not on here and you're from Falmouth and you want PDPs, go ahead and add your name. Also, if we don't have your email, name, email, and contact, and you want us
There we go,
to
thank you. Got it? Yeah.
be able to contact you or provide you information, add your name, and contact here on your way out.
Just once. Yeah, just a lot.
Hello?
got feeling power. You wouldn't believe I did 22 years IT work. Support that.
Every board
Yeah, that's true. On the left,
Oh, no, never mind, that was
send it over that side first. You really can't see this, but this was one of the earlier maps that weren't huts. This is from 1877. Doesn't have the dates on the bottom, I put. But anyhow, this was after we were considered a reservation and properties were handed out to those who were living on it. So you got allotments so that basically the tribe could run as a district. So they had to divvy up the properties, basically. And I would say that 90% of these were tribal members. We didn't call them members back then. That was the tribe, basically. They're very hard to see, but you can see that there's a lot. This is 2015, and this was proposed tax takings for foreclosures. I didn't have a really, really old map, and I really do have some really, really old maps, but I wanted you to see that the population then was native. What was it again? 1877. And as you can see on this one, you can see how densely populated it is through, well, of course, the water lines. Anywhere around water that you can see, it's very populated now. More so than it used to be. When I move on, let's see. I don't know if I'm going up or down here. Let's see. Oh, this is fun. Come on. There we go. What am I doing? Hold that.
You just tap it twice on your. Just tap the board twice itself, maybe.
Oh, something was happening. We had a circle for a second.
Did I answer these questions?
I know more than me, I guarantee.
So, anyhow, I'll try and. Let's go right. No? It's below this,
Yeah, it is.
so.
You got, okay.
You gotta hold on to it. Okay, that's what it is. All right.
Drag
Drag my hand up. Use 3 fingers now. I tried to give you some numbers to help you understand some of the transformation that we went through. The Earl Report is what we base our last whole numbers as a tribe when we were the only ones here in Mashpee. As you can see, there were only 40 other people in Mashpee at the time, and they were married to tribal members. Doesn't mean that they weren't a Quina or some other Wampanoag tribe. It means that they just weren't Mashpee, or they could have been foreigners. But basically, that was the last report by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where they actually sent someone out. His name was John Milton Earl, and had every single native in the state of Massachusetts accounted for by name, age, and location. A lot of people think that, you know, you're Wampanoag, I could be from Nauset, I could be from Herring Pond, but realistically, before colonization, there was 69 bands of Wampanoag. Now I can probably count 5. I'm not going to go through them all. I get calls all the time. I got a call today from a young lady with the last name Nickerson. And said, well, the Nauset tribe, the Wampanoag tribe, doesn't exist any longer. They think that we were all related. We were some pretty close, but we weren't all related at that time, even before colonization. So then I went down and looked at the U.S. Census, which happened, the 1910 U.S. Census happened to be the first time they actually documented in a census Indians by race. Again, you can see, I don't have Mashpee Town because they didn't have those kind of reports. I couldn't find it. But you can see, you know, how many of us and how many non-Mashpee Wampanoags there were. I'm not liking these. I'm going to stop touching the screen. The next U.S. Census, 1930. Again, you can see we're creeping up. They're creeping up on us, okay? We're getting more and more population going here. And 1960, these are actually town reports. Creeping up over us about 1960. I was born in 59. I say creeping up on us, but there was a large summer population, like you guys know now, right? It started in the 50s and 60s. I'll get into that in a second, but now in the 1960s, 1990, we are the minority here. It's hard to look at this without seeing the same thing. In the since incorporation, the Mashpee Wampanoag people actually ran the town offices. My grandmother was the first female tax collector, treasurer, tax collector. My mother followed in her footsteps. As well, you can see, I couldn't get a better number than, all they told me was 97%. But you can see how much we have grown in a short period of time. I mean, the tribal members have grown too, but not like the rest of this. And you can see that on the maps as well. What I find interesting, if I can bring this up here, is, and it was in the early 1900s when the tourism started. We had a tribal member who lived just south of Mashpee Lake, and he ran a trout type tourism. He took people fishing basically in the lakes, and that's kind of part of the tourism that started. But traditionally, we Mashpee people used to summer in Papaneset and New Seabury. Why wouldn't you, right? And when the inn was built in about 1940, that kind of took away from what we were used to doing by just being able to walk down. And I recall when I was growing up that from Red Brook Road all the way to South Cape Beach was a dirt road. And I walked it, let me tell you. Because it's a beautiful beach. Who wouldn't want to go down there? I mean, I lived all the way up in Mashpee, almost into 130. But that's what we did. That's how we did it. We walked to school. We walked to the beach. We walked anywhere we wanted to because there was hardly anyone here. But let's see. These are just some examples, okay? So even in the 1960s, I would, in the archives across the street as a kindergartner, when they built the Samuel G. Davis School was actually given to the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. I don't know if any of you know that, by Samuel G. Davis. When it got changed hands, I didn't really put in there, I didn't look it up. It's really not my interest at this point. Someday I'll get back to it. But at that point, what the town offices were doing was they were getting funds to help the old age, disabilities, and general relief. General relief was more so for children. If they didn't have medical, they couldn't pay for medical needs or things like that. So here goes the expansion of South Cape Beach, okay? Crime increases, and these are all in the town reports of Mashpee, just so you know these facts here. There were 2 armed robberies for the first time in the history of the town, and 40 arrests were made. Big change from when I'm walking down the street, no problems, no coyotes either, but I didn't mind that part. Literally, I mean, we stop and get some blueberries, you stop and take a dip in the river, and there was just, it's not like that these days, and you all know what these days are like, In the 1990s, the state cuts the aid to the cities and towns, so there's no more aging age assistant, disabilities, or general relief. The Chase family started the new Seabury construction. It appeared that the town might end up with a deficit, but they collected back taxes off of one property and were able to actually clear the debt at that time. Houses in Papaneset went from, in 1 year, 25 to 425. So, you see where my numbers came from when they changed, where we are now the minority. 2010, Mashpee got a new library, a bike path expansion on Route 130, and was designated as a green community. Mashpee approved funding for affordable housing reserved for 3 homes, Habitat for Humanity. 19 homes were in foreclosure and would have been held by the town as conservation land. Instead, they were changed to affordable houses. 19, okay? Like 20 houses, right? Where's everybody still? You guys know it's incredible to try and find some place to live if you're on low income. On Cape Cod, a lot of places, but the Mashpee Wampanoag built 52, or we're still building the 52 low-income houses on what I call Noisy Hole on Meeting House Road. Call it Noisy Hole because you don't realize it, but there's a river that runs in the back of that housing project, and that's where a lot of us hung out in the back roads along the rivers, and my favorite blueberry bush is still over there. And I told them when they started construction, don't touch my bush. That's how we were. You knew where things were because maybe we didn't have a bike, maybe we had bikes, but we were down, I learned how to drive on the dirt roads, down the back roads. And that's where we were taught how to grow up. There's the river, go swim in it if you want to, You're hot, go ahead. You want to get somewhere, get your feet off the ground and get walking. That's how it is. That's how it was. Now, I don't walk anywhere. I don't feel safe. Just me, just saying.
What caused the sale in the 1960s of all that property?
It was the tourism. It's
But it was
when you have more people coming to a place, and we'll say some of them stay and some of them don't. Okay, so you're collecting more taxes, okay, or maybe they're getting old and they're staying here more often. But when that happens and there's no jobs, then you lose your house. And the people, and I won't give names to this, but those who were in Papaneset and New Seabury were not huge. There probably weren't even this many people down there. But basically, to afford life, because now instead of walking to get my blueberries or going fishing down the street, I have to live in a house and I have to pay taxes on that house. So can they all afford it, especially the aged, when they've been there and the house has been passed down time after time after time? I know properties where I've read in history where the people are still there, that their families grew up there and lived there all their lives and just passed the house down on and on and on. Even myself, but not all the houses are still standing, I'm not saying that, but at least in the same area. But you can understand, if you don't have a job here, you can't live here. Questions? I know it's just a bunch of numbers, but that's...
It's not a bunch of numbers, it's lives, it's history.
It is lives.
Rita, were these numbers that you have here, were they the year-round residents or just the summer included tourists or people that came for the summer, I should say?
Anybody who owned a house as far as the 1960s forward.
So whether they lived here year-round or not?
Yeah, whether they were, They include all of them. They don't break it down in any town reports or any information. The U.S. Census, when they were handwriting the U.S. Census, which is where I get a lot of information from, you can find out what the person was doing for a living, if they were doing anything at all. other than that, it won't tell you beyond if they owned a house or not.
Yeah.
Even in the town reports, they don't break it down year-round and part-time.
So even in the 60s, where the population was starting to change, where there was a lot more, there was a big rise in the non-native, year-round it's possible they were still pretty, mostly native. Like in the winter times, they're mostly native people.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Go ahead.
Was there a particular event or events that occurred that, where I'm looking at that first Earl report, the comparison between the number of Native people in Mashpee then versus the census in 1910?
Disease,
Incorporation of the town.
incorporation, wars. I'm working with Mashpee Historic Commission, and we've got a new Veterans Memorial going out. Well, we were hoping sooner than COVID, but we didn't get it yet. But there are hundreds of Mashpee people, Mashpee Wampanoags, that fought in every single war that this country's been engaged in. Civil War to the 2 dates. So before 1859, okay, Civil War, Revolutionary War, I don't have the dates in my head, sorry teachers, but we've always had a lot of people in serving this country. So if they weren't serving this country, they went off, and I'm that kind of person that, oh, there's a big boat, I've never been out on the water before, I want to go see the world. And a lot of Mashpee people are like that, they want to go see the world, but then we come back too. But whaling was a big interest before the even 1800s they did a lot of whaling, but disease took a lot of people. If you think of a small town like this before, I don't know, we'll see the 1910 census, how many people would have gotten vaccines just by being in school? I know until, I think it was, until they built the Samuel G. Davis School, I don't even think schools in Mashpee or on Cape Cod got vaccines at that point. I know I got them in the Samuel G. Davis School, and I went through all my grade school through there. No other questions? Yeah. You try that side.
Do we want to save it?
No.
Is this here?
That.
This is.
That's the file. No. Oh, that's like the last one you see.
Okay.
Wait. No.
Was it left arrow
Same
thing?
thing.
What's that?
Left arrow? Or that may, yeah. Is there a?
That.
So,
This is yours.
you're online, right?
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Whoops.
No, you had it.
But I didn't click on the right one. I didn't know.
Okay.
Oops, accept.
Can you find it?
No,
Was it a folder or a file?
it was a file, but it's, okay.
Well, you won't see it. You don't see it listed
Oh,
yet,
oh,
like a
okay.
PowerPoint. What's the name of it?
PD something, so. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go.
All right, just give me my drive back tomorrow.
It's kind of like an iPad, just put two hands and squeeze it together to make it go.
Like, oh, okay. But to get, well, I guess I can just do this for starters.
Last night, just change up the clock.
All right. So this is just sort of, this is essentially the same statistics that you're looking at right now, that were on the handouts that Rita printed for you. But I wanted to visualize what this shift in population looks like. So, of course, as you can see, and as we just talked about, right, the population of tribal members, or tribal people, has gone down consistently, right, over the last 150 or more years, while the population of non-tribal people in Mashpee has gone up. And so, for a moment, I would like, I want everyone to stand up. And this side of the room is going to represent the Wampanoag population in Mashpee, and this side of the room is going to represent the non-Wampanoag population in Mashpee, okay? And I did a quick head count. There's roughly 30 people, so we're going to just assume the number is 30 of everyone, right? So if we have, in 1859, we have 90% of the town, or 90% of these 30 people, are Wampanoag. So let's take 27 people and put 27 people over here. So 3 people can stay over there. Whoever's the closest and furthest to that end. All right. So this is 1959, right? If you think about this, like, roughly this geographic area. So this is approximately what the demographics look like, right? You take that forward about 50 years to 1910, now we've got about 80% of that same group, right? So let's take another 3 people and go to this side. So now we're coming up on the on this most recent century, right? So the last 100 years approximately. And actually, so going this way for a minute. Jeez, terrible at this.
Does it go up and down?
Try just tapping it on the left or right.
Okay, so thank you. So these pictures I meant to mention before. These are kind of like various different representations of Mashpee over the last, let's say, 70 years. This, I think, in my Google search, this says 1950, right? So this is even still like a little bit more than what Mashpee was like at the time that we're representing here, right? So going back to, you know, who in the room has been in Mashpee for 3 generations or more, most people in this room have no connection to this Mashpee, right? Oh my God, my sweater can do it, but I can't do it. Okay. So now, let's see, that's 1910, so 1930, 73%. So let's take one more person over here. Okay, so here, the change is not that dramatic, right? Like, as Rita was talking about, we're still kind of, you know, tourism isn't really set in yet, right? It's like Papaneset is not anything like what Papaneset looks like now. 1960, there's a pretty big jump, right? So, sorry, I'm going to leave that up just for a second, but the statistic here, so we went from 73% in 1930, but now we're at 31% in 1960. So that's pretty huge. So let's see, 30% of 30 is what, about 9? 9? All right, so let's see. 9 people stay. Everyone else can go.
We need one more.
Welcome back. So again, this is pretty dramatic, right? And this is, I think, the part of Mashpee history where I feel like so much happens in this point that I think most people who are not either part of the tribe or directly connected to the tribe have very little idea about, right? And so I'm actually really looking forward to this part because I'm probably going to learn a lot too. We'll get there in a few weeks, but so this middle picture is sort of representing that era that's kind of upcoming here. This is a picture of the Flume restaurant. Anyone remember the Flume? Anyone ever live above the Flume? So this is a restaurant that I was told today was opened in about 1974, right? And Roxanne's father and stepmother were the owners of the Flume for like 30 years approximately, right? And it was also, I would say, definitely a tourist destination for sure. One of probably the first kind of attractions in Mashpee that was pretty widely known. Whoops. Sorry. So then we have kind of another large jump in terms of our timeline here. So going from where we're at right now, which is 1960, to 1990, we're now down to 10%. Okay, so 10%, or well, 11%. So 11% of Mashpee population is Wampanoag tribal members in 1990. So we just need 3 to stay now. All right, so this is approximately the numbers that I remember as a kid growing up. And it's funny because at that time, that felt like a lot to me. I think as a student in Mashpee schools, I don't know, I feel like maybe my 8th grade class was like a little over 100 students. And I feel like probably 10 of us were tribal members, and that seemed like a big number. So putting it in here in percentages and looking at the room, it's really not, right, at all. Now, jumping ahead another 20 years to 2010, we are now at 5%, and you can say. And now we're still even more than 5%, right? This is not even like one of you can like, I don't know, stand on your knees or something to get half, right? And then in 2020, we are down to 3%. So just one of you sticking around. You can pretend you're dad. Okay, so this is where we're at now. And when we first started, it was just about the opposite, right? And even though this is like 170 years, this is still like, I think, still very, very like close in the minds of most tribal members, right? That this change has happened relatively fast and in the lifetime of many people. So, okay, you can also tell. Oh, and of course, this is the Mashpee that we all know today, right? This last picture, Mashpee Commons. So the next thing that I wanted to do, and this is going to be sort of like our wrap up, but for next like maybe like 8 minutes until 5:30, we just like talk at your tables about some of these questions, and some of them Rita sort of alluded to a little bit. But why do you think some of these numbers have changed the way that they have? Especially some of the really drastic changes, right? For example, 1930 to 1960, why is that? From 1990 to the present, why is that? Why are these so different? And what does this mean for tribal people here in Mashpee? So, okay, about 8 minutes, and then we'll kind of just share into the group. At this point, open discussion. So, would anyone like to share what you were thinking around answers to some of these questions?
I don't know if we were thinking this was the answer or more a question. The major changes from 30 to 60. Tourism to an extent, but it doesn't seem like, you know, thinking back, like were people traveling that far for tourism at that point? Does it have to do with the base in World War II? Did like a lot of the soldiers end up, because that was an incredibly busy base during World War II.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure that has to do with part of it. But I do think also, and you know, Rita kind of talked about this, like once New Seabury got started, right, it was like developers were just like, right? So even if the numbers are, you know, a couple hundred people, right? Like I think that does account for a lot of it. But I think you're right. I mean, I think the base is something to do with that as well.
Or even just cars, people having a car.
Right, having more ability to get, you know, even just from Boston to come down to the beach.
I'm just thinking my parents never went anywhere. Like going from Charlestown to Billerica was a big trip. And it's like 15 miles. Well, it takes a lot longer than it used to now. But, and I mean, I grew up in Billerica. There's no reason to go there.
In Pompanesett, what happened to all of those people that were living off of the land when the developers came?
They went wherever else.
Was there anything offered to them, like any kind of?
I'm sorry?
Was anything offered, like support, help?
I highly doubt it, although I don't, to be honest, I don't really know about that. But I think, and maybe Roxanne, if you have any insight on this, please jump in. But I think a large number of people in that area weren't necessarily living down there, like at least not like on the water, like we think of like, you know, Bob Kraft's house, right? And if you drive through Pompanesett, like you'll see it's like modest house, mansion, 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 modest house, right? Like those are the ones that are like, you know, this era, right? Or probably even before, right? This like large scale development. But those houses are not, you know, tribally owned houses anymore, right? So sale pushed them through. A lot of properties were lost to taxes, you know, over years, not just in that era, but you know, since taxes began to be assessed in Mashpee. But I do think though that, you know, presently most Wampanoag families that are still living in Mashpee kind of live along the 130 route. And I think that that's kind of always how it's been. So more often, I think people who were using South Mashpee were using it seasonally. And so maybe didn't have like, you know, a permanent structure house there. So, yeah.
Natana, I think too, many families ended up moving into the cities, especially when it was industrial, the textile, shoemaking, Brockton, New Bedford. And also I have to wonder how World War I and II impacted our populations, because a lot of our men went off to war. The whaling as well, early on, how that impacted us. And many did not return. So.
I had a question about between 1960 and 1990. The tribal population had been holding pretty steady for the last few decades. And then with the large increase of non-native residents, also came a large increase in native residents reported here, from like 260 to 1,000. I was interested. I couldn't come up with any hypothesis in my head about like what would have caused that large increase in the native population, other than potentially rediscovering identity, or after kind of some of the erasure during the school era.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's partly it. I think it's also just kind of general population growth. So, like, I think it's kind of a combination of those things. I think that people who grew up in Mashpee during like the 60s, 70s were sort of established here already, and so we're staying, but people kind of after that point are not as able to stay here, right? you know, and I definitely think that's kind of what accounts for the sharp decline after that, right? Like, if you didn't already have a house here, you're not having one, right? If you're like middle income or low income. So I think that that increase is like you said, kind of like a cultural revitalization, and then, you know, thereafter it's like, oh well, this was fun for a little while, and you know, and then we have a lot of tribal members currently, like in Wareham and New Bedford.
Because the enrolled tribal members are in like 2,000 plus, right?
Yes, actually, I think it's like almost 3,000.
Almost 3,000.
Yeah, but that's, you know, the whole entire world.
Has opening the tribal housing helped?
I think so. I think so. Especially into Mashpee specifically. I don't know that a number of those people who are in tribal housing came from very far necessarily. You know, Falmouth and Bourne and whatnot. But definitely in terms of getting people back into Mashpee. And there's so I don't know how familiar anyone is with the tribal housing development, but it's over on Meeting House Road, or off of Meeting House Road. And so I think, what'd you say, there's like 50 something units over there. And the first like third of it to half of it maybe is elders housing. And then right around the holidays, they finished the second half of it, which is more like family housing. So I would imagine, especially those of you who are in Coombs School, like I bet you have students who live over there, because I feel like it's all like 6 and 7-year-olds over there. So,
I just wonder, with so many young families, how was that? How did they figure who moved in? Was it all
It was lottery.
It was from a lottery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in 1859, how did the Native population in Mashpee compare with Native populations in other towns on Cape Cod?
Well, we're going to talk about that sort of like how Mashpee became kind of a hub in a couple of weeks, and I'm like that part of history is definitely not an area of expertise for me. But Mashpee was established as a praying town, and so Wampanoag people from various different places were coming here. In like I would say from King Philip's War up until now, Mashpee has really become a place where Wampanoag people from all over the territories have come. So it's not like, even though, you know, today we're all Mashpee Wampanoag, we all have ties to, or many of us have ties to other different communities as well. And so there may still in some towns be, you know, a couple of people who kind of either, you know, have family ties in those areas or have remained in those areas, but for the most part, it's really sporadic. And most people are in Mashpee, like the vast majority. So either this or other things as well. Roxanne, she had asked if what some of these names were on this map, and I was trying to read them while you all were talking. But it's really, really small. But what I could see is that in the area of Route 130, like Santuit Pond area, I see Amos in a couple places. I see Webquish, and part of these, like some of these, I only can tell because they're names I recognize. Some of them I can't. Like it's so small that if I don't recognize it, I can't read it.
Lots of land.
I don't know what her. Oh, actually, maybe I do know what her file is called. Maybe I can find it and bring it back up. Let's see. Oh boy, here we go again.
1877 map not divided into plots because it's not how you use your land?
I'm sorry?
The 1877 map, is it not divided into plots because that's not how you use the land?
I'm sorry.
The 1877 map she had for her.
Yeah, do you have it in front of you, or is
No.
it on that? It's not on that. Okay. Let me see if I can find it on here. Oops. So, 1877. So your question was about, is it not, because it's not divided that way?
Right.
I think just, these are these are town maps, I believe, that she pulled. So I think rather than, I think it's on there, it's just like, because the population density is so much smaller, it's just like that much more complicated to see. But the other one, the older one, it has names on it, but they're not, like I said, they're just incredibly difficult to read. And that's actually the one that I was trying to read from before, where their names are there, but they're like, it's just not very legible.
Right, but there weren't that many. So I'm wondering, all the rest of the big pieces of land, were they communally owned? I guess that's what
I think if you look, if you want, you can come up and take a peek at this later. There are not very many areas that are not accounted for by someone. It's pretty, and again, I can't tell which ones might say, Mashpee, like town of Mashpee, right? But yeah, there's definitely some names in the majority of these.
Because that 1877 would have been before the town was incorporated?
Yeah, no, 1870.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the town would have owned.
So those were part of the allotments, right? That each family and individual were given, was it 80 acres?
Sounds about right.
A piece.
From
Yeah,
the town?
Pardon?
From the town?
I think as part of the incorporation, like the agreement made between the town and whoever really was kind of in charge of the Indian district before that, that was the agreement made.
Yeah. It would have been like the federal government, but more the state? Yeah, whoever assigned the Indian agent to the district. That was kind of a national movement of giving allotted land to Indians to make them farmers, rather than being more communal and tribal. It was part of the work towards really kind of a genocidal type of movement.
And this is the beginning too of taxation, right? So prior to that, that wasn't the case. So all of these allotments, everyone gets their 80 acres, and then a majority of them don't pay the taxes because they don't know that that's even a thing.
Right.
Or, they're just farming. They don't have money, right?
There's no
So,
income to pay those taxes.
right, exactly. So pretty quickly, this is no longer, in existence. Or many of these are gone from families.
So did that happen beyond Mashpee, like in Bourne, like the Herring Pond tribe? Did they also get land outside of Mashpee?
Well, Herring Pond would be like the land that Herring Pond has is in Bourne. But I don't really know exactly how I don't think they had allotments. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't believe so. Because the way that, prior to Mashpee's incorporation, Mashpee was considered an Indian district and Bourne wasn't that. So I think that's the difference. And there's a few of those. So there's one on Martha's Vineyard too, Christian Town. There's, and there's a few others like in kind of the greater Boston area. But I think that's the difference in how, why there was land allotments here and not in other places. But Darius and David, in a couple of weeks, will have a lot more information on that, I'm sure. So, actually, just clicked over to 5:46, so we'll wrap it up for today. If anyone else has further questions, feel free to